And they were happy people up until that moment. And they spend the rest of their lives miserable because they stay bitter, and you got to get past it. You got to get past it. Whoever you lost wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life miserable.
I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years, and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised, we'd be cordial.
Hi, everyone. Kristin Walker here. We are on with Dr. Paul Meier. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Kristin. Good to be with you.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk about anger and resentment. And I feel like I should have some organ music or something going dun 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 when I say that. Oh, the levels that you think you let go of a bunch, and then you dig more and you're like, oh boy, that I just got to the first floor. Or the 10th floor. I've got 9 more floors to go, and I thought I was doing okay. So, Paul, you went out and did some noodling around whenever we come up with topics. So what are some things that you came up with?
Well, I'll start out with a statement just right from Google. When I Googled, this is what the first thing that popped up, and I thought it was pretty good. So I'll share just a couple sentences here with our listening family. But how bitterness affects our health. Bitterness is poison to our body. Bitterness, hatred, and unforgiveness can result in ulcers, high blood pressure, and all other diseases. It's estimated that almost 90% of our sicknesses are anger, fear, resentment, and bitterness related. And that's a fact. I learned that in medical school that anger is the leading cause of death. And when I first heard that, I thought, it surprised me. But now that I've been a doctor all these, many decades and psychiatrist, it doesn't surprise me. And in a few minutes later in the program, I'll explain how that happens. But bitterness affects the body, like we said, high blood pressure, sleeplessness, loss of appetite, fatigue. It takes away joy, peace, and happiness. In fact, depression is called anger turned inward. So if you have anger and hold it inside you, it depletes serotonin and causes depression. It affects our thoughts, our feelings. Most depression has its root from bitterness, resentment, anger, and unforgiveness. It causes anxiety. Because anxiety is, I often have defined anxiety as a fear of finding out the truth about our own thoughts, feelings, and motives. And when we in therapy and dig and probe and look for buried truth, a large percentage of the time, what's buried in there is anger, guilt, is a form of anger toward ourselves for things that we've done wrong. False guilt is when we're feeling angry toward ourselves for not being perfect and we're having too high expectations, and anger toward others, so anxiety is being afraid of being aware of our anger is a large cause of anxiety. And Kristin, what surprises a lot of people is that the nicer you are, the more likely it is that you're going to have repressed anger, because jerks, if they get mad, they here, kick you or yell at you, or, they let it out. And people who are real polite and want to be kind and people like that tend to deny their anger and hold it in, and then they get more depressed. And even headaches, if you get bitter on the inside, then or if you get real angry, I mean, getting angry doesn't hurt you, but if you stay angry or have excessive anger or hang on to it too long or things, then serotonin actually dumps out of the brain and attaches to blood vessels, and it causes migraine headaches and it causes pain. And if you had a severe migraine and went to the emergency room, the doctor would probably give you an injection of Imitrex or something like that. And all Imitrex does is it blocks the serotonin receptors in the blood vessels. So even a lot of headaches that we get are because, and nice people, like I say, get them more than not nice people, but a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are due to anger on the inside that we stuff. It affects our behavior, sudden outbursts of anger. It makes us more likely to abuse alcohol, drugs, or tobacco. Right. It causes social withdrawal and relationship problems. It can alienate us from other people because that attitude of, they can sense that bitterness inside of us, and that can scare people away from getting close to us.
Right.
And it can detour from our very best to the extent that life can't be fully celebrated and enjoyed. So there's a statement, internet with a little ad-libbing on the side.
Yeah, I mean, here's an interesting thing. So, or it's interesting to me anyway. So I grew up around so much anger. Oh my gosh. And raging behavior. Like if my father stubbed his toe on a door, he would take a knife and cut the door and, break a chair on the door. And I mean, just absolutely out of control rage. And then my mother screaming constantly and raging. So for me as a kid, I just did a lot of tap dancing around trying to keep that from popping out in the people I was around. And, I know from lots of therapy and all that, well, I used food to stuff my own feelings down. And, this work that I'm doing now, which I don't think I was prepared to do until now. I think sometimes things come out when we can handle them too. So some of the work I'm doing now is really about me from age 5 to 12, when I was around my father the most and alone with him. And a lot of it is around forgiveness. And the more I write out the things that I want to forgive and the things I want to let go of, and I write out what I'm angry about and then try to reframe those things in order to let them go, the more I realize, every time I do that exercise of writing it out, I feel this void, a good void, and a bunch of good rushes into my life. And then the more I do it, the more I'm also like, wow, I have a lot of stuff to work on that I didn't even realize.
Yeah, those are called Gestalt techniques, and I want to share that with our listening family, how they can do that with themselves, even without a therapist, but with a therapist would be better. But 1 hour of doing a Gestalt type thing is worth about 6 or 8 hours of talking about that situation with somebody. But what I mean by Gestalt type things are like when you want to write out how you felt and what you're learning about the ages 5 to 12 or whatever, then what we would do here in our outpatient program or in our day program, where people come 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, 3 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, is we would have them write a letter to themselves so you would say, dear little Kristin, Kristin, dear 5 to 10-year-old Kristin, here, I love you, and here's what I hope you can learn, and you're teaching her and telling her what she can do, and you're helping her, and doing that helps you get in touch with your feelings, or if there's somebody that's hurt you, we have them put an empty chair in front of them and tell them how they feel. If there's somebody that you think you might be mad at, because when I ask a client, well, don't you think you're really mad at your dad? No, I'm not mad at him.
Right.
Well, yeah, but he beats you up every day. Well, I know, but I mean, I forgave him a long time ago, and I said, well, let's put an empty chair in front of you right now, pretend like your dad's sitting there, and look him right in the eye and tell him how you feel. And so they'll start just talking nonchalantly, and within a few minutes, it'll get more intense, and maybe within 5 or 6 minutes, they'll be crying, and the emotions come. It's called decathexis, but the emotions come pouring out, and all that buried rage that was there becomes unburied, and it results in a lot of rapid healing. So doing those kinds of techniques, like letter writing, talking to an empty chair, things like that can really help you heal quicker. So that's good that you did that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing this kind of program with another one of the podcasters on the network, and I have to write 2 of these papers a day, handwrite them, and I'm like, handwrite? I don't even remember how to do it.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that I'd recommend that you, instead of just writing it out in factual form, I'd write it out as a letter to yourself when you were that age.
Oh yeah, there's all that too.
That helps you get in touch more with a few more things. And you feel a lot of empathy for yourself that way, and instead of when you're a kid and things go wrong and your parents are abusive, you think it's your fault.
Right.
I'm a bad kid, or they wouldn't be doing this.
Well, you think
so
too
when you're writing a letter to yourself, that helps you to see the truth.
Absolutely, and I think too that I learned anyway that being angry is bad, because if I ever got angry about what was happening, I was in trouble. I was supposed to just be quiet and, not be in the way. So I wasn't heard or validated, all those things that, little kids need. And I had run across a picture of myself when I was 7, and I know it was a trip to figure out, oh, that is how old I was, because I remember I had a perm. And you remember that movie Grease, Paul, with Olivia Newton-John and John?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Why I was allowed to see that at 7, I do not know. But anyway, I saw it when I was 7, and that's the year that it came out. And I know when I saw this picture, it didn't have a date on it, but I saw the perm that's in my hair, because I got my hair permed like Olivia Newton-John at the end of the movie. And I went, oh, I was 7, because that's why my hair has curls, because my hair is normally like straw, right? And I'm so angry in this picture, so angry. And I don't have any anger. I used to, and she scared me, that younger me. I don't now. I feel a tremendous amount of compassion for her, but it wasn't until I looked at that picture and realized how angry I absolutely am, steaming in this picture, just steaming angry.
Yeah, and you said something real important for our listening family to realize too, is that anger is not bad.
Right.
Anger is good. It's normal. I mean, Jesus got angry. God gets angry, and Jesus got angry and chased a bunch of people ripping people off in the temple. He chased them out with a whip. I
was going to ask you to share that story. Yeah.
Yeah. But and the Apostle Paul said in Ephesians chapter 4, he said, "Go ahead and get angry without sinning." It's in the Greek, original Greek. It's in the passive imperative tense, meaning it's not just you have permission to get angry. It's go ahead and do it. Get angry without sinning, but don't let the sun go down on your wrath. In other words, don't let it turn into bitterness. So it's okay to get angry, but it's not okay to get bitter. When we're bitter towards somebody, that's like swallowing rat poison and hoping it hurts the other guy. When my kids were young, when they were growing up, if they got angry, I didn't condemn them for it or punish them for getting angry. In fact, I said, "Thanks for letting me know how you feel. You're angry with Daddy right now?" Yeah, I'm mad, Daddy. I said, "Well, thanks for letting me know how you feel. That's important that you let me know how you feel." Now, next time you hit your sister, you're still gonna get disciplined, you know. but it's important that you let me know how you feel, you know. And you know, so I encourage them to share their feelings, and of course, if you know, little kids, if they're 3 or 4 years old and they're crying to punish you, you know, and you tell them, oh, go ahead and cry. That's good for you. Let your sadness out. That's really good for you. Then they'll look at you and stop crying and say, I'm done crying, Daddy.
I used to do that with my son. He would throw a fit in a grocery store. You know, he's probably 3 or 4, and he would just be on the floor screaming. And I just would go, okay, well, then I'm going to keep on shopping. And I would just keep walking on. You know, I would just keep, I knew where he was. So it wasn't like, you know, if somebody was going to snatch him, he would have screamed bloody murder anyway if they tried to. But he finally would just get up and walk over to me and go, I'm done now.
Punish you with it.
But yeah, I just didn't, it was not okay. It was not okay for me to have feelings, period. And so what's made that great for me is in certain situations that were volatile in a business setting or something, or in work, well, in a business setting, I absolutely am calm through the whole thing. Unflappable, I've been called, you know. But while that was good in work situations, that has not served me well in terms of my self-care. So that's because you know, it's a skill to learn how to do that, to not let your emotions get the best of you. It's certainly a skill, but it's not, it ceases to be a skill when you do that to the point where you're anesthetized to things that you really should be angry about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we need to be in touch with our feelings.
Yeah. So ways that you can, you know, take someone. So think about, you know, patients that you've had over the years where you just knew that they were so angry, but they were so out of touch with their anger that they didn't even recognize that they were angry, nor how to get it out.
Yeah, I remember a guy. In I think one reason why women live longer than men is women are permitted in our culture more than men are to share their feelings. I mean, you know, in your case, you weren't allowed either, but boys especially, you know, big boys don't cry, you know, and boys, sometimes if they express their anger or they cry because they're sad when they're little, they get, you know, the crap beat out of them by their, you know, mean dad or somebody, and for even crying, you know, because they're being a wimp if they cry and all that sort of thing. And so the more you stuff anger, the younger you die, and we're going to get into that later. But I had a patient who was a male, and he was a perfectionist, and I think he was an engineer, you know, and engineers are real smart. And there's certain careers where people are really, really smart, but they're not in touch with feelings. And this guy was really angry toward somebody. I don't remember if it was his mom or his dad or his wife or somebody. And so I said, well, you really seem angry. He said, no, I don't get angry. And I said, well, it seems like you're angry to me. He says, no, I'm not angry. I'm just frustrated. You know, that's a cop-out word for angry. You know, frustration is the same. And so I said, well, you really do seem angry to me. And I knew I wasn't going to give up until, and finally, after I said that about 4 or 5 times, he blew up and he really lost his temper. He said, that makes me so mad. I don't ever get angry. You know, they realized what he had done, you know. He said, well, I guess that's what, you know. You know, so a lot of people aren't aware of their buried anger, and especially perfectionistic people. You know, a lot of people grow up thinking it's a sin to get angry. You know, so they feel guilty if they have that normal emotion that God intended us to have.
Well, what are, you know, outside of a therapy office? So let's say, you know, a friend or a colleague or a relative, whatever, does something and it's just really crappy. Like it just is
Mhm.
really, or they've been doing something that's really crappy and you just figured it out. What are appropriate ways to handle things like that, aside from going to your therapist and going, "Arr!"
Well, if you love somebody, I mean, like I love my wife and she loves me, and we get angry at each other because neither of us is perfect. Sometimes I think I am, but no, I'm just teasing. I never think I am.
I know you too well
sometimes,
to
sometimes,
believe that.
sometimes she thinks that I think I am, but anyway, but we get angry. We get angry at each other, and when we do, we can share it though. Say, hey, I'm feeling angry right now. If I got mad at you for something, or you got mad at me for something that we did, or accidentally hurt each other's, both of us are nice people. We wouldn't hurt each other on purpose, but we could by accident or something. And 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 if it's somebody that you love and care about, then you speak the truth in love. And you say, hey, I'm feeling angry toward you right now, and you're not telling them what they did was right or wrong. You're telling them how you feel about what they did. Because if you say that you shouldn't do this or you should do that, you're being that person's parent.
Right.
See, it's better to share how you feel about what they did. I feel sad that this happened. I feel angry that about what you did, and I just wanted to share it with you. And if you do that in a humble and loving way, then they're going to love you for telling them the truth. I mean, they may not, celebrate it the first moment they hear it, but
Right.
when you talk a little bit, you'll grow closer when you share. Couples that share their anger with each other are a lot more intimate than couples that don't,
Oh,
and so you grow from it.
absolutely.
But if you share anger towards somebody that's a total narcissist or something, they'll just get mad at you. And King Solomon said, "Don't waste your time sharing your anger with people like that because it won't do you any good.
Yes,
It won't help
yes.
them." But sharing
I've,
anger helps the other person as much as it helps you if it's
mm,
with a wise person.
yes, with a wise person. I was driving today actually, and there's this person who just is one of the worst, not worst, what am I saying? What I was around as a kid. A 5-year-old running around in someone's body that's 20 years older or 15 years older than I am. And just 2 weeks of being around this person, I was like, oh, no way. I threw down so many boundaries. I was building a brick wall throughout the course of the relationship until I finally said, all right, I'm done. We're done. It was not a dating situation. It was a wanting to be my
Yeah,
friend situation. And I saw
yeah.
them driving past me today, and I don't even acknowledge them because it's better for my health. And they're just happy as a clam. And I thought, yeah, yep, people like that who just, you know, rage at other people and bust down boundaries and, you know, people like that are called narcissists. Of course they're happy. Not really. Are they really
They're
happy?
not
No,
really happy.
no.
They're
But they offload
yeah,
all their crud onto everybody around them, and so they're
yeah.
pretty free. And I thought, well, there's another perfect example of why I'm so glad I'm not carrying around a bunch of anger at this person. I just got them out of my life quickly because she is not sweating at all her behavior.
And
And
Kristin, when we're bitter, according to things I've learned in psychiatry and research and things like that, when we're bitter, almost always it's because we're harboring vengeful motives. If I'm bitter, that doesn't just mean I'm sad about
oh,
something or upset about something. It means part of me is hanging on to grudges, and
ooh,
grudges are what really kill you. So if you're bitter towards somebody that hurt you in the past, it means you really want to punish that person yourself.
yeah.
And that's where that's where a relationship with God really comes in handy. Like in Romans 12, God says, "Hey, I understand. I'll get vengeance on people that hurt you. You're my child, and if you let me, I'll get vengeance on that person. So don't ever get vengeance yourself." He says, "Don't do it. Let me do it. If you do it, then I won't do it. But if you don't get vengeance and ask me to take care of it, I'll do what's perfectly fair because I understand all the facts." And it says in King David wrote in Psalm 68 that if you abuse, that God says, if you abuse one of my kids, all these kids that get abused by people, even in his kids, even means adult kids. But if somebody abuses one of my kids, I'm going to smash their heads against the rocks. I mean, God gets pretty ticked, and he'll get vengeance unless that person truly, genuinely repents, not just acts like it. He forgives anybody, and he loves everybody, even abusers. But if they'll change, but if so, when I get real angry and bitter towards somebody, I think, this is stupid. And I remind people of this too. There's 8 billion people on planet Earth, and that person that you're bitter toward is just one of them. That's just one person out of 8 billion. Why should I ruin my life? Why should I depress myself, cause myself to have ulcers, high blood pressure, lower resistance to diseases? Why should I do all that? Because I'm bitter toward one person out of 8 billion when about half of those 8 billion are jerks, just like that one. And so you see how foolish it is to hang on to bitterness, and so I'll turn it over to God and say, okay, God, you do whatever you want to with that person. I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go and turn it over to you. And it really helps me.
Yeah. It's been helping me too, to just, I've even thought, well, there's a reason for this. How can I reframe this in my mind to see the gift in this situation? With this recent one, it was, okay, well, hey, girl, I'm patting you on the back, my own back, because you absolutely stood up for yourself immediately. There was no getting away with someone thinking that my boundary was a red cape asking them to charge through it. No, they found out it was a brick wall. And guilt didn't win. And I could have sat and just been resentful and angry and all these things and bitter about it, but I just kept reframing in my head, what's the gift in this? What is the gift in this? What did you learn from this? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about how much you care about yourself now that you would not tolerate this, that you got out of this quickly? I just keep trying to reframe. And I have to say my therapist is a really great, part of that, because even sitting in her office, she'll say, what's a different way that maybe you could word that sentence that I just said about myself? And that's started to help me retrain the way I think.
Yeah, you learn that if you really do love yourself in a healthy way, Kristin, then you won't allow yourself to be around people all day, every day that are going to create angry situations in you, because anger destroys us. So we need to avoid hanging out with people that are going to keep hurting us, even at work. It's hard to soar with the eagles when you're working with turkey.
Yeah. And I think about that too, in terms of, sometimes people are in your life and for me, they have felt like a clamp. They want me to be small because that's the box they feel comfortable with me being in, because that's their comfort level for, me being in a relationship with them. And when that relationship is gone, all this room opens up, and probably for them too, to not be involved. But, I saw that certainly happen with my ex-husband, and then of course we come back together. But, sometimes people, you have to, their need to keep you in addiction or in, like you've said, Paul, in other shows where the husband gets sober and then the wife starts drinking, or the wife needs all this therapy, or vice versa.
50% of the time the wife will divorce if somebody's an alcoholic, and her dad was one, so she married someone like it.
Yep.
And her husband goes straight and goes to AA and quits drinking, gets therapy, becomes a nice person. 50% of the time the wife will divorce that guy and marry another alcoholic, because she's got that codependency need to be in a relationship with an alcoholic, and often fostering it accidentally, encouraging it subconsciously. Let me tell you about. Let me get out of the way some of the technical stuff that I feel like I've got to tell you, listening family. You need to know just a little bit of the medical how this works, but when you're like I said, when you're angry, that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. But if you hang on to the anger and it turns into bitterness, then you've got a little gland in your brain called the hypothalamus, and it releases. It can sense that when you're hanging on to bitterness, it releases adrenal cortical trophic hormone releasing factor, ACTHRF, and that goes in the bloodstream and goes to a nearby organ called the pituitary gland. That doctors used to think that was the master gland in the body that controlled all the other ones, but actually, and it sort of is, but the hypothalamus, they found out later, controls it. But the pituitary gland puts out adrenal cortical trophic hormone, ACTH. You might have heard of that, and that gets in the bloodstream, and it goes down to the adrenal glands that lay on your kidneys, and the adrenal glands put out stress hormones, and at first it may help you, but then if you keep on staying bitter and it keeps putting, the ACTH keeps affecting the adrenal glands, then you end up with fewer antibodies, and so you have less ability to fight off all kinds of diseases, and so that's why it's almost like having AIDS. When you have AIDS, you can come down with any kind of infection. Instead of being able to fight it off, you can die from it. And so the more bitter you are, the more diseases you can get. And I'm not saying everybody that gets sick is bitter. Some people get sick because of genetic tendencies, or there's the flu's going around, and you just happen to get it, and maybe sometimes it's bad luck. But lots of times, a lot of our resistance, like it said on the internet, that's something I learned in medical school, that maybe 80 or 90% of our sicknesses are in some way we became more vulnerable toward getting that through buried anger, resentment, bitterness, things like that. So that's how that works. That's how it works. Plus, anger will result in serotonin depletion out of our brains, which causes us to get more tired and irritable and sad and anxious, and wake up in the middle of the night, can't get back to sleep, and self-critical, and it's like putting dog poop on your glasses, and you look around at the world, and the world's even worse than it is. And the world's pretty bad as it is. If I watch too much news, I can get depressed, because there's so much evil going on in the world, and just even people that act like they're good people are lying all the time and deceiving, and it's sad, when you see all that going on. So I can only tolerate a little bit of the truth at a time.
I know. I can't listen to it and watch it. I can read like Google News and read what the highlights are of the day from multiple sources. So I want to hear both sides. I want to hear from one side of the coin and the other, so I can try to find some kind of happy middle. But I can't actually watch it or listen to it because it just makes me anxious.
Yeah, and so much of what you're hearing is just people just lying, knowingly lying. And but anyway, the more anger we have, the more likely it is that we're going to get all sorts of diseases, including depression, which is anger turned inward. And when the same thing when we grieve. Every time you have a loss, Kristin, or I have a loss, or anyone that's listening to us right now has a loss, and it can be a little loss like a broken fingernail, or it can be a huge loss like the death of a loved one, or going bankrupt, or getting fired from a job that you felt secure in for 20 years, or having your wife run off with another woman, or another man, or it can be a lot of different things. But whenever we have a loss, we first, we can't believe it, and then there's three types of anger that we have. First, there's anger turned outward. So we get mad at somebody, whoever we can blame first for whatever happened that we're angry about. And part of that anger turned outward, usually, if it's a major thing, usually involves getting angry at God for allowing it to happen, because he could prevent anything, and he didn't prevent it. So therefore, we get angry at God for allowing it to happen. And then then comes anger at the self, where we blame ourselves and sometimes there is a little bit of blame, but oftentimes it's excessive false guilt, and then there's genuine grief where you just cry over the loss. Then there's resolution, and if we know the stages of grief and we allow ourselves to ventilate them, ventilate, no, vent them.
Yes. Ventilate. That's a whole new thing. Taking venting and taking it to a whole new place.
Might need to ventilate them, yeah. We might need to turn the air conditioning on that heat, but still, if we allow ourselves to go ahead and get angry and talk about it, and even tell God, I'm feeling angry toward you right now, and he just puts his arm around us, and it doesn't bother him in the least. So if we vent, and if we forgive ourselves for what we may have done wrong, and not hold a bitterness toward ourselves for the things that are false guilt too, then if we work through those stages, then we don't suffer. We don't. But if you get hung up in one of them, and they were bitter people up until that moment, the person who spend the rest of their lives miserable because tragic loss, or bitter toward. If you stay bitter toward God, you gotta get past it. There's people who wouldn't want you to spend a child die or something, and it's we all have losses, and so we need to get through those anger stages, or because if you get hung up in them, then that turns into bitterness, and that turns into all those physical illnesses and depression and all of that.
I think too, to me, it keeps you in a perpetual state of being a victim also.
Yeah.
I mean because exactly, because I've had people say to me, oh, if I wasn't doing this with you, I could have been doing these other wonderful things instead. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't hold a gun to your head. You are an adult. That was a choice. And if you want to go do those things, go do those things. But when it's usually somebody that's what they do about everybody in their life. Everybody in their life has done them wrong in some way, and so they're always upset and bitter and resentful at how they've been held back in life because they've given all this to people that were unworthy or whatever it is. And I think when I look at those kind of things, I think, wow, that is someone that is really wants to, or because of whatever's gone on in their life, live in this perpetual state of being a victim.
You just did a little convicting.
I did. Well, tell me how.
I just had an insight, because before the program, I've got this sheet of paper here, and I've got about 30 different things that popped into my head, one after the other, that have to do with anger and bitterness and stuff. And being a victim wasn't one of them. And when you mentioned it, I thought, that's what my wife accuses me of a lot. Like, oh, you really like to play the victim role. Because if her and I have an argument or something, of course our natural tendency is going to be to think that I'm right and she's wrong, But
right.
And sometimes I'll feel sorry for myself. Well, I'll think, well, I'm such a nice guy to her. I mean, how could she get mad at me when I do this and I do that and blah blah blah, and how could that happen? And poor me. Then the more I think about it, then I become more aware of some insights and share my own flaws. But sometimes it takes a little while, and I get caught up in that.
I have too, Paul. Listen, I say it from doing it too. It's not like but you know what happened for me when you said that? When you said, oh, you're doing some convicting, I immediately I didn't go straight to shame, but I got near it. Like, oh, I just said something wrong. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, no, you said something right. It was
I know, but my first
insight.
reaction was to be like, maybe I said something wrong. Exactly. And I thought about this too when you're talking about
feelings.
Exactly. Or no, it was more like, I was thinking of it more like this. Oh no, I just said something totally egotistical. It was more like that. Like I was thinking,
not at all.
I just said something really egotistical, and Paul is telling me that's really egotistical. That was where I went with it. Isn't that funny?
No,
that's what I do.
when you said it, my head cocked, and I thought, wow, that's something that I do.
Right.
That's
This is why I always
sorry.
thought, yeah, this is why I always thought that Michael and I made such a good pair, and we don't do this anymore because he blamed, not anymore. He blamed everything else on everybody else, and I blamed everything on me. So for him, it was a perfect
What a
relationship.
match.
And then I
Kristin,
learned,
you're a jerk. Kristin, you're a jerk. And you'd say, I'm even worse than that.
totally self-flagellation.
You should really get to know me. Then you'd find out I'm even worse than that.
So I still have those knee-jerk tendencies to think, oh, I've done something wrong, but I'm able to go, wait a minute. Let's examine this further. Don't go to the shame. Look at this in a different way, and not instantly have that stuff in my chest and where it's taken over my emotions. And I don't do that, but that takes a lot of work to do it. But that victim thing, it makes me think about too, like how ways that we all can do that. And sometimes we are victims of things, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with denying that we have been, because everybody has been in some way, but probably taking up rent and paying a mortgage there is what's not the good idea.
Yeah. Lots of times when I feel, when I fall into the victim role, I'm not really a victim. I just feel sorry for myself that somebody disagrees with me. or thinks that I'm selfish, or have some flaw that I obviously couldn't possibly have until I become aware of it. And I think, well, maybe I do.
See, here's where we're opposite. I would immediately, in the past, assigned myself that flaw without checking first to see if it's even real or valid. And that's not healthy.
Our listening family, I would really encourage our listening family to sometime this week go to Mental Health News Radio and find our podcast that Kristin and I did on self-talk, because that really fits in.
Yes. Oh, that was a good show.
If you we can't redo the whole show or anything, but right here, but in a nutshell, if you grow up, for example, in a home where one or both parents are putting you down all the time, when you're a kid, you believe it. You think they know, and if they're mad at you, it's because there's something wrong with you, but it may not have anything to do with you. And so if you grow up being criticized a lot, then you're automatically going to do that to yourself, and your parents are locked into your brain until you kick them out. Even after they're dead and gone, 50 years later, they're still in your brain. And so if you leave your lights on, for example, and your battery goes dead, and you go out and you say to yourself, "You stupid idiot," then you're creating. See, that's bitterness. You're getting bitter at yourself for making a mistake. And I always ask people to get a pen and paper, write today's date down, and write a note to yourself saying, from today on, I'm not going to say anything negative to myself that I wouldn't tell my best friend under the same circumstances. So if your best friend drove you somewhere and your best friend left his or her lights on and the battery was dead, you wouldn't in fury look at your best friend and say, "You stupid idiot." I hope you wouldn't do that, because then your best friend will ditch you pretty quick if you would. So you would tell your best friend the truth, and the truth is that you'd say, "Hey, we're all human. Don't worry. We'll do something. We'll We'll see if somebody's got a jack. I mean, not a jack, but a jumper cable or
Right.
call AAA or something."
Right.
So you would tell your friend the truth, but you'd tell yourself a lie that you should have been perfect. I don't know if have you ever gone golfing?
It's a sport. That would be a no.
Yeah. I used to golf quite a bit. I was never good at it, but usually I would golf with my friends, so it wasn't so bad. But if you golf with random people, you're bound to get these people that every time they don't get a perfect shot, they're calling on the name of the Lord in the wrong way.
Oh yeah, and saying
just swearing
loudly,
at themselves, "You stupid idiot! How could you do that?" And "Oh, what an idiot you are!" And they have 4 hours of fury.
Oh.
I mean, how could golfing make them feel any better? You know what I mean? And so if you have negative self-talk, then you're destroying your health.
Yes.
And so you need to be nice to yourself and tell yourself the truth. It doesn't mean you lie to yourself. I mean, but you tell yourself the truth like you would your best friend. And so that can cause a lot of, that's one source of a lot of bitterness is negative self-talk. And I encourage you all to, in our listening family, to listen to some of those podcasts that we did on self-talk.
Yeah, I'll post the link to that show up in the show notes for this one, so listeners, you can find it. That was a really uplifting, good show. That actually started me on this course of working with one of our other podcasters, Dr. Paolo Molino in Italy. We do Skype calls, and he does life coaching with me because it's it can't be counseling when it's international like that, but we're doing that inner child. We were going back to the time in my life when I was really angry for good reason and letting myself be angry and then letting it go. Just letting it go. It's amazing how much I even feel, just my footsteps are lighter on the ground every time I do a session. Than they were 20 minutes before. And we get into it. He's big into Gestalt stuff.
There's not very many therapists that do that anymore. They're all into this cognitive restructuring. They're all into intellectual stuff. And cognitive, all those cognitive things, they're important.
They're great.
They help. They're great. Yeah. But we need to, it's sort of a lost art. And I train, when people come here that are suicidal or unable to function and they go into our Catalyst program, and stay here three weeks and get 7 hours a day of therapy, the therapists, I've trained them all to do a lot of Gestalt because, like I said, one session of 1 hour of doing a Gestalt with somebody is like 7 or 8 hours of talking to them about that problem.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to get somebody dramatically well in 3 weeks, then you got to do a lot of shortcut things, and so it's good. I mean, we do all the other stuff too, but it's important to get in touch with feelings and sometimes
get it out.
Get
it.
If somebody lost a baby, we'll have them bring a shoebox and go out and have a burial out in the field on people, and just so they can get in touch with their grief and have a good cry and there's things that you can do that suck out the bitterness that's inside of us, and that's something I really, really want to do to take care of myself, and I should think about it more often. But a lot of times at night, when I'm laying in bed getting ready to go to sleep, I'll think and I'll pray and I think, am I bitter toward anybody? Because the most loving thing I can do for myself is let go.
Right.
Let go. Not hang on to bitterness toward myself either. I got to forgive myself for the failures.
Absolutely. Hey, I write on those forgiveness papers, man, every day now. I'm like, boy, these are addicting in a good way. I'm like, what? I feel so good the next day that I'm like, how many can I write today? Let's unearth more, because it's the room that opens up.
Well, people say, how can I forgive somebody that raped me? And I say, forgiving them doesn't mean condoning what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, you may want to sue the guy, you may want, or a gal, or you may want to get the person put in prison, and that's not getting vengeance. That's protecting society from somebody like that. But hanging on to bitterness is just going to kill you, and that person doing that is not worth. You're going to have some suffering and post-traumatic stress just to recover from that. But if you hang on to bitterness, you can spend the rest of your life suffering because of,
in a prison.
of the bitterness. And so,
Exactly.
So getting rid of bitterness doesn't mean you're condoning what he did at all. So when you forgive him, it doesn't mean you're condoning what he did. It just means you're giving up your personal right to get vengeance on him, and you turn them over to God, and God says, hey, if somebody abuses one of my kids, I'll smash their heads against the rocks. If we knew what God was going to do, we might feel sorry for them. And I don't think we'd feel sorry for them, but we might. So I just, just trust God to do what's fair.
You know what I want to close the show with, because this is what I always hear from you, and it's such a important piece that I've learned as an adult, just because I wasn't raised in any kind of spiritual background until I got into about eighth grade, and then things changed. But I never, you'll say that you talk to God and you have conversations and you can say whatever's on your heart. And that always amazes me because it doesn't even occur to me most of the time to do that. It just not even occur to me. And I think, well, that's probably why Paul has so much room to write all these books and have all these clinics, because he gets it out of him into a safe place regularly.
I'm thankful that I'm thankful I learned that in my childhood. My mom and dad were very, loving, godly people. They weren't perfect, but they were really good people, and they gave us lots of hugs. They demonstrated to us what God was like, and we'd every night at the supper table we'd have to eat supper together. We couldn't just go in there and with TV tray and watch TV and eat.
Right.
We at the supper table, and my dad would pull out his Bible and read a few verses every night, and I would be upset lots of times because I'd want to get out and play baseball, and I'd have to sit there 5 minutes waiting for him to get done.
Right.
But it really taught me a lot of neat things, and so I just different things will happen. I'll just chat with God, or I'll become aware, like I did when you were talking about victimization, and how I feel sorry for myself. I'll become aware of something like that, and I'll crack a joke with God lots of times and say, okay, well, look at that now. Look at that. Look what you just showed me now. Why'd you do that right now? I wasn't ready for that,
Yeah, I'm learning to do that more.
People think I'm talking to myself, so.
I'm learning to do that. I do that when I take my horse out for our walks. 'Cause I don't start riding her really until next month. I refuse to ride her until I know how to put a saddle on myself, and I'm getting all those lessons starting next month. So I do that with her. We just walk, and she's a great listener.
Yeah.
So yeah, it helps. It helps a lot. I mean, I'm having a spiritual conversation, but she's the vehicle that helps me actually make it happen, because it still doesn't occur to me to do it when I'm by myself.
Yeah,
So
neat the way a horse or a dog can sense when you are angry or sad and come up and lick you and try to comfort you. And
oh yeah, and my horse is so stubborn, because when she doesn't want to go somewhere, she doesn't want to go, and I have to negotiate with her.
So if she's angry, she'll let you know, right?
Well, it's usually I'm angry about something, or I'm not confident about something, or whatever. And so she's just mirroring kind of what's going on with me. Whereas with dogs, I'm very much like snap your finger and the dog does what you tell it to do. That's how all my dogs have always been. Horses are not dogs. It's a very different relationship, and they're not going to do something with you if they don't feel confident in you. I guess because they're prey animals, not predators. So if she doesn't want to go somewhere because she's nervous about something, I have to negotiate that with her. Like every time we go out to this field, I can't go a certain way because for whatever reason, she always sticks her foot in the same hole every time, her foot, one of her hooves in a hole, it freaks her out. And so even going that way causes her anxiety. So I have to like walk her in circles. Anyway, I just have to do a lot of negotiating. And if I treated her like a dog, I would be trying to force her to listen to my command. And with a horse, it's like you can't, that does not work. So sometimes my journey with her on a walk is that I have walked with her in 20 circles to finally get her to go. But it works. It teaches me a lot about patience, a lot about respect, and a lot about, just having that time like you're talking about where you talk, you have those conversations, you have to let go of your anger, let go of whatever, and be really present and mindful. A horse makes you do that for sure. So anyway, Paul, I'm so glad that we had this discussion. It just popped in my head earlier today, and I figured you would send me an encyclopedia of things that you had found. But
Good thing I didn't have time to prepare. If I would have had time to prepare, I'd have 6,000 more things that we haven't covered.
we'd have like a 12 series thing on anger and resentment.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, because it is such a big thing in psychiatry,
oh,
anger, and in mental, in physical health too. It's just such a
absolutely.
huge, a lot bigger than people realize how much we do to ourselves
Yeah.
by hanging on to bitterness. And we need to go ahead and get angry. It's okay to get angry. If you pretend like you're not, that's just as bad for you as stuffing it. So
Yeah.
being aware of it, verbalizing it, and forgiving, is taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Paul, for another great show.
I enjoyed it.
And thank you to our listening family for tuning into another roundtable discussion with Dr. Paul Meier on Mental Health News Radio. I know, no one likes commercials, but seriously, folks, without the help from these organizations, we could not stay on the air. Please give a shout out to zencharts.com. If you're a mental health or addiction treatment center, you'll want to use their EHR. It's gorgeous, and they're just good people. And also MyGenetics, MyGenetx.com, because knowing your genetic code empowers your mental health treatment. And lastly, CopeNotes.com. We love getting positive messages right to our phones every day from Johnny Crowder. He's the lead singer of Prison, a heavy metal band sharing their music about suicide prevention, addiction recovery, and mental health. See, that was painless. Support them as they support us. Back to the show.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it.
Good boy. Oh, that was so good at the end of such a long
That was a good topic. That was a good
Yeah.
topic. That, dude, a lot of people will love you good if they heard that one.
Oh, yeah.